Welcome back to the series that Rajkumari, Neogy, and I, Sarah Peyton, are doing on your brain in your workplace. Today we're going to be talking about how to accompany ourselves with compassion and resonance as we are moving through our workdays. Hello, Rajkumari.
Hello, Sarah. I am so excited about this topic. How do we accompany ourselves to our workplace? Wow, that is a concept unto itself. My goodness.
It is.
My goodness. You know, it's so interesting. I'm working with a company right now that just went through layoffs this week, and I was speaking with the CTO, and she was telling me that these people who stayed at the company, who didn't get laid off, were in tears.
No.
Just absolutely in tears. And it's impossible, in my humble opinion, that we can show up at the workplace without who we are emotionally.
No, it's so true.
It's just impossible. And it's heart-wrenching to hear things, expressions such as, leave the baggage at the door. And I know that as the times have changed, we are now and have been entering into a place of bring your authentic self, bring your whole self to the workplace. And that has become kind of the platitudes that we're hearing, the call to action, the clarion that we are inviting new and upcoming and, the Facebooks and the Googles and perhaps even the Wells Fargos of the world to step into more of who they are, their more genuine selves. And so the question is, how do you do that? How do you accompany yourself into stepping into your authentic self, or a more whole you, or a more genuine you, or a more reflective you when you are being demanded upon in so many ways throughout the day, when you have meetings that are back to back from 8 to 5, if you're in senior management, or if you're being tasked with crisis management, because that's where you excel, and you are just completely triaging 7 hours out of the day. You're even eating at your desk. How in the world can you possibly take the time to accompany yourself, to support yourself, to even, my goodness, may I even say it, feel your feelings in the moment, right?
Yes. Well, the research that we're working with today is twofold. There are some amazing bits of research that start to reveal a little bit about this secret of self-accompaniment. The first piece of research that we're working with is the research that shows that children who have a sense that their parents are resources move through the world without having the flows of cortisol, the responses and reactivity to stress that children who feel alone experience. So this holds true as we continue into adulthood. The more we have a sense that we have with us at all times the people who love us, the easier it is on our bodies and our immune systems, and on our emotions, and on our sense of being accompanied, period, in our world as we move through our lives. So for many of us, there may not have been warm, supportive figures from our childhood that have accompanied us throughout our lives. This means that we need to become our own warm, supportive, accompanying figures. And this process is called the healing of attachment wounds. It's called becoming moving into earned secure attachment. We earn or learn our security and our attachment. That's the first piece of research. I'll stop there for a moment, and then I'll tell you the second piece of research.
Thank you. I love how you always pause to invite me in, Sarah. That's something that really warms me. You're so considerate in that way. Thank you. And so this just, kind of epiphanies as I'm listening to you speak into, wow, so that makes perfect sense to me if you have an employee who has had parents who have been incredibly well-resourced for them and able able to have that level of attachment and in essence, confidence, right, that they can go out into the world. And then they have to interact with someone who has the polarity of that experience, who's reactive and defensive and doesn't trust and feels unsafe. And they're thinking, wow, this person is, and then there's this whole list of judgments or words or expletives even. And so then there becomes this entanglement, this disconnection, this inability to relate because two individuals aren't communicating on the same platform. They have different ways of relating. One might be more trusting and engaging and wanting to collaborate more, where the other might feel more withdrawn, more reserved, more mistrusting, and therefore might be more wanting to do things in a micromanaged way or in a siloed way. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I mean, you actually described it, the three different possibilities with the kind of the lone wolf idea of succeeding in business, the collaborative idea of succeeding in business, and then the people that are having a rough time emotionally and acting out and reacting. And those folks, I think, are the ones that original idea of leave your baggage at the door was kind of designed for, was that what happens when we actually have somebody who's been traumatized who enters the workplace. How do we hold that? And then if that person becomes senior management or was born into senior management, like when companies are passed from father to child, you know, sometimes we find these holdovers of trauma. How do we integrate all of the facets of being human into the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to put a pin in what you just said. You know, there's for those of you who aren't yet familiar with what epigenetics is, I would really recommend strongly that you Google that. There's a fantastic video you can watch about epigenetics that came out a couple months ago. But ultimately, it's about how we express our DNA, how we show up in the world based on our mental models and our belief systems. And I love how you said, you know, pass down from father to son, or let's also invite mother to daughter. And, you know, just there's the whole little anecdote about, and this is, you know, unfortunately a gender-biased anecdote, the Thanksgiving when the mother is cutting the ham to put it in the pan or whatever, and the daughter asks, why are you cutting the ends of the ham? And then the mom says, I don't know, go ask your grandmother. And then the grandmother says, oh, because the pan and the oven were smaller back in the day, kind of a thing. So to really become conscientious of you know, how we show up and why we do the things we do, to become that scientist, that really curious individual, that, as I like to say, ferocious curiosity, to step into that place, to begin to examine our patterning, our transgenerational patterning, right? Mm-hmm. What's passed down, you know, over time from our families, and we bring that into the workplace. We bring the ways that our parents think. We bring the ways that our grandparents think. We bring in the financial burdens from the 20s. We bring in the natural disasters and the catastrophe and the anxiety. We bring all of that in, even if we don't know it. That's why it's called unconscious bias, right? These are the places that we show up that we don't even realize that we're doing. And so part of showing up in a self-accompaniment or a self-regulated way is to begin to have that level of curiosity to explore self, to explore the situation, to take a step back, to look at the whole picture. What is in fact going on? How am I actually showing up? What am I feeling? And the invitation to stand in the right hemisphere, or the hemisphere that gives us access to see the whole of it, of what's going on.
And the next piece of research that comes in and supports us, so Rajkumari and I are now creating a case for the idea that it would be lovely for each of you to have your own self-accompanying witness and ally that travels with you. The second piece of research that we're bringing is the research of James M. Cohen, where he shows that when people what he did was he put people into MRI machines and he would administer small electric shocks to their ankles. And of course, their pain circuits would light up. And then if they had somebody with them, if they were accompanied, even if it wasn't someone they knew, the pain circuits actually didn't show up as clearly. The pain circuits didn't light up as much if they were accompanied even by somebody they didn't know.
Wow.
And yes, and then if they were accompanied by someone close, a partner, then their pain circuits wouldn't light up at all. So we're starting to see that the experience of pain is different for different people, depending on whether or not they have a sense of being supported in the world. Pain, discomfort, difficulty, even the expenditure of effort is different for accomplishing tasks, depending on whether or not we're accompanied.
It's interesting, what's coming up for me are protests and protesters, and I'm wondering if crowds who are protesting injustice, maybe unconsciously or consciously, they're fighting for a cause, obviously, they're advocating their beliefs and the rights to change and transform and affect that change, are actually mitigating the pain of that injustice collectively.
My sense would be that they were mitigating the pain of acting against the dominant paradigm by accompanying one another, they make their protest more possible.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So just to come back to James M. Cohen for one moment, that two people standing at the bottom of a hill, if the person is standing alone at the bottom of the hill, they'll actually estimate that the slope is more steep. If they're standing at the bottom of the hill with someone they don't know, they'll estimate the slope as less steep. And if they're standing with someone that's very close to them, a partner or someone like that, then the hill doesn't seem steep at all. So again, the importance of accompaniment for effortlessness and lowering stress as we move through the workday. So I think we've made that case. Rajkumari, what do you think?
Yes. So what I'm hearing you say is when you are able to self-accompany, when you are able to show up for others in that way, what you're doing is creating potentiality, creating opportunity. You are, in essence, adding more menu options on your menu. And from there, you can create, innovate, design, strategize, build, anything that comes from, and we talked about this in the last session, what is your purpose? What is your passion? What is it that you would like to contribute and impact in the world and make that social change? How do you want to show up that leaves a footprint that you're proud of?
And Rajkumari, I'm really interested because you do coaching with folks who are in these positions, going into the workplace and having a difficult time. What are some of the techniques and tools that you offer people to begin to accompany themselves?
Well, it's so interesting. As we were having this conversation, a client just texted me an update from our session yesterday. And she's in the process of cleaning her bedroom. Now, this might not seem like a really big deal. However, it is actually, from my perspective, a huge deal. I'm not sure if we're going to get into all of the techniques or even one, but what I do want to talk about right now, which is an essential understanding about self and how our external environment really is a reflection of our internal landscape. And part of self-accompaniment, part of knowing who you are and how to show up for yourself is to really look inside and to begin to find those calibration instruments and to see where the lights in the meters are showing up. And are they in the red zone? Are they in the yellow zone? And maybe they're in the green zone. This particular client is a very high-powered lawyer. She has 2 kids. They're younger, they're 4 and 6, and she she's young, she's in her late 30s. She has, when I first met her, incredibly high levels of anxiety. Now, if we were to look at what anxiety is, and we can talk about this in a different episode, I would love to put a pin in that, is that anxiety is about flight, about fleeing, about getting away, right? I'm so anxious I don't know what to do about this, and so I'm going to distract myself. Beneath all of that is sadness, and we can talk in detail about the long laundry list of her sadness, but we won't in this episode. that is reflected in her external environment through chaos, through mess. There's a great show on Bravo, I don't know, back in 2006. I don't know if they have it anymore, called Hoarders. Do you know about this show, Sarah?
Oh, yes.
And as you recall, these people had these houses that they were just hoarding all of these material objects, right? And so there was this team that would come in and clean the house, and then within 6 months, what would happen?
I'm assuming, it's not a show I've watched, but I'm assuming they would rebuild their connection with physical objects.
Yeah, very much so, and very, very quickly, and sometimes even more than before. And so the team decided then to maybe think about doing it differently, and they decided to bring in a psychologist to work with that. And what they found was that there was a need to address the sadness inside that hadn't been addressed or even had awareness around. And so when they began to integrate the sadness, when they began to release whatever the trauma or the wound or the disappointment that was linked to the sadness, healed or transformed, what happened?
Well, I imagine that things got better.
Things got certainly better, and there wasn't a need to, as you say, link to material objects. And so when this client texted me just now that she's cleaning her bedroom, it is amazing. It is a huge indication that she is connecting to herself more, doing that self-accompaniment, doing that self-care. And you can now, through empirical data, if you will, notice that internal shift by seeing the change in her external environment. And so one of the techniques that you can employ immediately is to just simply glance externally. Glance around you. Look at your environment. Look at your friends. Look at the situation at your work. What's working for you and what's not working for you? Yeah? And why is the stuff that's working for you? And what is it about the stuff that's not working for you challenging? Mm. So to begin to look at that way to excavate the places in which you might be holding yourself back and not able to yet do that level of self-accompaniment.
It's beautiful, Rajkumari. And I feel so much tenderness for your client and so much hope and gratitude that this person is receiving support that lets them begin to have a sense of movement. One of the ways that I also enjoy inviting people to move towards self-accompaniment is to acknowledge, first of all, that self-warmth can be almost unthinkable. It can be almost against people's own integrity because they kind of believe that they are bad and that they should not be accompanied. And if they would just shape up and fly right, then they would be able to earn or deserve being accompanied.
And then you would attribute that, Sarah, yes, to the parents and whether they were proper resources for the child. Is that right?
Yes, that's a huge piece. And then what kind of traumas the person has experienced since early childhood as well can have an incredible effect. Different types of abuse just change the way the brain functions, and those can happen after early childhood as well, and really compromise people's capacity to believe that they matter and that they have worth in the world. So here's a very easy thing that I love to offer, which is just a 3-breath mini breath meditation, where you inhale. You see if you can find the place where your inhale has a little bit of sensation to it. It might be in your nostrils or your upper sinuses. It might be in the way your ribs move, or it might be in your throat. But wherever you can feel it, to invite your attention to rest there. And then create a sense of your attention as being almost like a puppy that gets drawn everywhere to investigate everything and to make sure that nothing dangerous is happening. And you watch your attention with gentleness and warmth. And you say, thank you, attention, for leaving my breath and trying to bring my attention to the pain in my back. I'm so grateful. Would you be willing to come back to the breath? This is very gentle, just 3 breaths of this. Maybe once a day, maybe several times a day. Not so much that you open the door to what I call the savage default network, where we start to cut ourselves to bloody ribbons with self-criticism, but rather just those 3 breaths of, some sweetness, some warmth, some acceptance, some acknowledgement for who we are and how our brain works. So this is a beautiful starting place also, Rajkumari, that
I love it, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing. And if I can just dovetail into that and pin a little bit more, for those of you who might ask the why, or I can't, or that seems challenging, this is the perfect opportunity to bring yourself into your right hemisphere. Yes, Sarah?
Yes, because whenever we bring our attention to our body sensations, not the clenching of our fists or the cramping of our feet, no, the internal body sensations within the torso, within the throat, the facial expressions, these awaken the right hemisphere.
Right. And one of the things that for me is fascinating, we don't talk about this in meditation or mindfulness, but the breath actually moves us from the left to the right, and this allows us to shift perspective. Mm-hmm. And so if you can think about the breath as a tool to gain insight, wisdom, perspective, see a different side, figure out how to strategize or innovate differently. Mm-hmm. This is actually a technique that you can use at the workplace so that it doesn't become a platitude or it doesn't become this woo-woo thing or this spiritual thing or whatever, that it actually is an effective tool to help you design, innovate, strategize, see things from a whole different viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Fabulous. Well, I think we'll close here today. We covered a lot. I hope you enjoyed this session talking about how to begin to make the first baby steps towards self-accompaniment. One of the tools that you can also use for accompanying with others is to do something very simple, is take meetings as walking meetings, right? To simply accompany someone. So as you begin to employ these different tools and techniques for yourself, we would actually love to hear from you how this is working out. Maybe you have questions. Maybe you have ideas that you'd like to share with us. We would love to hear your questions and your comments. You're welcome to email us or post down below. Sarah, might you have anything to add as we close this session out?
Blessings on everybody's head.
Fabulous. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you join us next time when we talk about empathy. Now that's going to be exciting, for me at least anyway. Empathy and what it's like to be that particular kind of human, how to begin to establish a relational point of view through empathy, what that's like, and how do we get there. Thanks, everyone. Talk soon.